They will be made, after you approve them, they'll be made available on our website for the public to review. So with that, I'll turn the floor over to our auditor, Dan Coleman with Quest CPAs.
Okay. Well, my name is Dan Coleman. I did the audit for the school this last year. I assume that everybody has access to the audit report, either a hard copy or maybe you're looking at it on a projector.
That is correct, Dan. And if you want to direct us to a specific page, we'll make sure that that is being presented to the room.
Okay, sounds good. I think there'll just be a couple pages that we refer to that I'll have you flip to. The rest we'll just kind of summarize for the board tonight, hit the high points and just move through it as quickly as we can. As far as the audit goes, early on, we send out a shopping list to Alicia that has a number of items on it that we would like to review during the audit. We get into the school's documentation a little bit. We get into compliance items, making sure that we're following local and federal and state laws with some of the things that we do there. And then also we take a look at the school's finances. And so we'll review the numbers just to make sure that they are materially correct. And so it's quite a process to go through. And then during the audit itself, as I sift through that information, I'll reach out to Alicia with questions and we'll have discussions on some of the things that we come across during the audit. Everything checked out good during the audit. There's nothing that I came across that I think negatively, needs brought up to the board tonight. There are 3 reports that I'll mention briefly. I don't think you need to turn to these pages. They're just boilerplate reports. There's a lot of data there, but I'll just summarize the results for the board tonight. On pages 1 through 4, you'll see the auditor's report. That's where we express an opinion on the financial statements. There's one of 4 different opinions that you can receive. We did issue an unmodified opinion, which is the best that we can give. It means that the financial information is accurate and can be relied upon by the board and the other patrons of the school district. So that first report there is a clean report. Secondly, on pages 42 and 43, towards the back of the audit report, we issue another report on internal controls and compliance. So as we come out to the school, there's a list of internal controls that we would like to see that are implemented by the school. And we'll review those controls. And if any are missing that are important, we'll suggest that a school start doing those. And I think I've mentioned this the last few years. One of the more important ones that we've had recently is just a monthly bank statement review by somebody in the accounting office other than the bookkeeper. And so that's just one example of an internal control that we like to see. Our bank reconciliations done monthly, that kind of stuff. Everything checked out good with your internal controls and compliance. So that is also a clean report there. The final report I'll mention is on pages 44 through 46. When a school spends over $750,000 of federal money, they're required to have what we used to call a single audit. Middleton this last year spent about $4.3 million of federal money. So it required an additional single audit, which basically just means that I have to do more work on my end. But Alicia, sends me all the same documentation. So we look at the school's federal major programs. Everything checked out good there as well. So 3 reports, all 3 clean reports. Very good. Switching gears just a little bit, we'll turn to page 10, and you guys will want to look at this one with me. On page 10, we'll look at the school's financial performance this last year. And school finance is broken down between major funds and non-major funds. And we're going to take a look at the school's major funds. There are 5 of those. You can see 4 of them on page 10. Each column is a different fund.
Page 10.
We'll start with that first column, the general fund.
Kind of the whole thing.
We'll look at the third number from the bottom, $602,437 in parentheses. So we showed a loss this last year in the general fund, $602,000. Very bottom there, number there, ending fund balance, $2,200,997. So on average, your school spends about $2.6 million per month. So that comes out to be about a 0.8 of a month operating reserve. So a little less than a month. Our recommendation in that general fund, we do like to see 1.5 to 3 months of reserve there. Just briefly, there are several reasons why, but mostly the idea is that you have a little cash on hand in that general fund to pay the school's bills in between the largest payments that you get from the State Department of Education. And the SDE sends out those payments usually 1.5 to 3 months apart. And so we kind of watch that and just say, okay, we need a little cash on hand to pay the bills in between those payments we receive from the SDE. So your fund balance historically for Middleton has been lower, I believe, than our recommendation. Usually hovers about a month from what I recall. And so it would be nice to increase that fund balance a bit if we can over the next couple of years. Maybe take a look at that and see how we can do that. There's a lot of pressure when you're spending $2.6 million a month. When you run that fund balance so low, there's a lot of pressure on the accounting department when they're paying the bills. It's kind of stressful. So that's why we recommend that 1.5 to 3 months. Second column in, Child Nutrition Fund. Third number from the bottom, $168,645 in parentheses. So we had a loss in the Child Nutrition Fund this last year. Very bottom number, ending fund balance, $874,363. When we first started auditing the Child Nutrition Fund, it was upside down and losing money. And I believe about in fiscal year 2020, we did some good things in that Child Nutrition Fund. And over the next few years, we're able to build up a fund balance there. This last year was tough for almost all the schools that I've seen. Couple of things going on with that Child Nutrition Fund. The federal free-for-all program ended, and so schools dealt with less revenue coming in from federal grants. And then if you look at this last year with food costs and inflation, it's just been expensive to feed the kids. And the combination of those two things, it's been normal for me to see a loss in that Child Nutrition Fund.
And Dan, could I jump in? Just one other note. Because of the level of our fund balance, we've also been receiving requests from the state to pay that down. The state, that part that manages the federal dollars for food services. So they've been asking us to spend that fund down because they don't like to see too high a percentage rate over. Thank you, Dan.
The 874.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, very good point. So this last year, you guys did receive a letter from the state. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the other thing that you watch, which you're well aware of. If that fund balance ends up too high, then the state will request you to spend it down. Yes. I'm trying to crunch the numbers here off the top of my head. What that number would be for you guys. If you give me just a second here, maybe you already know, maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Dan, Alicia says we're still about 170 over over the 3 month limit the state would like us to keep under.
Okay, very good. Alicia's on top of it. She knows it. Okay, so I won't,
700.
you guys know where you're at. Very good. Third column in, the bond fund. we're just going to look at the very bottom number there, the ending fund balance, 4,921,833. Our fiscal year 24 bond payments will come out to be about $4.3 million. And so we have enough ending in that fund balance to pay our debt for the next year, which makes us comfortable. And then, of course, the bond levy revenues will flow in as well throughout the next year. So bond fund is behaving as it should. Fourth column over, capital construction. We spent that money down on capital assets to a zero fund balance, the very bottom number there. And that's what you'll see in that capital construction fund is it builds up as you run a bond and then you spend it down over new construction.
And
The
those,
fund looks good.
and those expenditures were because they had to be at the high school, were for the track and football field. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you. Yep. We're going to turn to page 11 real quick and just look at the plant facility fund, which is the last major fund that you guys have. And no revenue flowing into that plant facility fund. Just some expenses there, some routine maintenance. Very bottom number, $908,202. So we have just a little over $900,000 in that plant facility fund. And Alicia, I know, watches that and considers, your current maintenance requirements plus any future projects that you might have to make sure you have enough money in that plant facility fund. That one, it always just depends on what our future projects are, how much money we should have in that fund. So there are a lot of other non-major funds that I was able to go through under the audit. Everything checked out good. Many of those funds are federal funds that zero out at the end of the year. So they don't carry a fund balance. There's not a whole lot of discussion that we could have there. But we could flip to those if anybody has questions on those. But I have been watching the ESSER funds. We've had some ESSER funds this last year. Sounds like you guys have pretty much, if not spent all of that ESSER money at this point. And so all those other funds behaving like they should. As far as recommendations go, there's just one other thing that I'd like to point out on page 28. I don't discuss this page very often, but I've been highlighting it this last year. The school has a retirement plan through Percy. And on page 28, you're looking at a disclosure note that goes through a bunch of percentages and ratios and numbers for Percy this last year. If you guys will look at the top right column, you'll see a bunch of percentages there. And if you look at 2022, the row for 2022, you'll see Percy was funded as of 2022 at 100.36%. Does everybody see that? Did you cut out? Am I still there?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So as of last year, Percy was fully funded. If you look right below that, 2023, Percy was 83% funded. So it's been a volatile market the last year, especially, and we've seen a drop in those assets that have been invested by Percy. What you'll see once in a while is they'll increase the contribution rate to balance out that volatility in the stock market. And we saw that this last year in July, we had a contribution increase for employees for the school district for what they pay into the retirement. But just wanted to bring that to your attention. We do watch that and disclose that information, and just wanted to run it by you just briefly tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all I have for the board tonight. At this point, I'll turn it back over to you guys. And then if there are any other questions or discussion items, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you.
We have other questions.
I just have a general question as far as, I know this is a balance sheet. Is there any particular, and it does talk about long-term capital assets, but that doesn't include like a assessment of the actual real estate in the schools as far as that assets column, does it?
Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, not in our financial statements, there isn't a total amount that I recall.
Only reason I asked that is I'm on the building committee. Sometimes I get parents asking about, alarmed at the cost of a new school. And ask, well, what are our schools worth? Well, it's not like we could sell them or anything, but sometimes they want to see, was there a number anywhere that reflects how much we've already invested in our schools? And I don't think there is anywhere, is there?
Well, actually, we, this last summer, did hired Valuations Northwest to come do a walkthrough for every school building, and we're doing a new construction valuation on that.
Okay.
And he was here on Thursday to wrap that up, because our modulars were completely in place. So as soon as we have that final report, I'll make sure you guys have a copy of it.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
The other,
Hey, could I add one thing to that, Alicia? Do you mind?
Sure, go ahead.
On page 18 in the audit report, you'll see a depreciation schedule for capital assets. And everything that you purchase that's a capital asset, that's material, is recorded at historical cost. And so when you look at page 18, you see a breakdown of the school's assets that they've purchased at historical cost. I think Alicia is talking about a schedule that they prepare maybe based on fair market values. But on page 18, you can see that your land that you bought at $2,067,444. You have $71 million in buildings, $2 million in equipment. So there is that schedule. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's kept at historical cost, what you paid for it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you, Dan.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Okay, thanks for your time. You guys have a good night.
You too.
Thank you, Dan.
Bye.
Hey, Jake has moved to my phone.
Oh, okay.
All right, with that being said, we do have a signed in visitor, and we'll give you,
There is an action item.
there is an action, oh, we do.
We do the action.
Yep, that's right. We do need to approve it and close that part of the meeting. Sorry, my bad. I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the audit for fiscal year 2023.
I move that we approve the audit for fiscal year 2023.
Second. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Bye.
Aye. Now we're ready to move on to our signed in visitor. Jump on up, Dave, and we'll give you some time.
I don't know if I want to stand up here too long. It's strange being on this side of it. I want to start with an apology. I've been meaning to come down and talk to you all for about a year and a half now. I'm only here because Superintendent Gee reminded me, which I asked him to do, because I forget every month that goes by, and I remember after the fact. So, 3 things. I know I spoke with Ms. Wagner, in the spring? I think
It was in the spring, yes.
about an ordinance that myself and Rob Kaiser were working on, which would have tied residential development to school capacity. We got that all finished up. We took it to STAR, we took it to Canyon County, and they signaled that they would be on board until about 3 weeks later when we got a call from Leslie Van Beek saying that she'd spoken to Steve Rule, and he had informed her that it would kill our ability to develop commercially, so the county would not be moving forward. Without the county on board, it does no good for the city to do it, because most of the school district is in fact county, and STAR is building our school district as well. So it has to be a 3-prong, 3 entities moving together. It's not dead, but it's on hiatus. Depending on how the election goes, I'm optimistic that we may resurrect it. It won't solve the immediate problem of overcrowding, but it will provide a light in the tunnel. So that would limit all residential development when a school is at 110% capacity. I'd be happy to answer any other questions regarding that at this time.
So you're keeping it you're tabling it basically, but you're waiting to see how certain things fall into place?
Well, so
They
even
gotta
if
get people on
the
board.
city passed it right now,
Uh-huh.
most of the growth that happens is an annexation, right? So if we say, no, we have this ordinance and it won't let us because there's no capacity, the county will still approve it. It will still go in.
Mhm.
The kids will still go to you. We don't get any tax revenue, but we have the burden on our infrastructure. So we have to get all three entities working in concert for it to have the desired effect.
So if the city passed it and Leslie talked to the mayor, I might have misunderstood you, but what did he say to her?
The city did not pass it. Nobody has passed it yet. It is-
Oh, I thought
It
you-
is sitting in hiatus in my
Excuse me.
electronic archive.
Okay,
Steve Rule told Leslie Van Beek that our ability to develop commercially would be severely hampered by it, which is untrue based on the fact that we have 2,000 to 3,000 homes already approved. Their pre-platted, preliminary plat is done, which means they have a contract. As long as they live by the terms of that contract, they will get the final plat approved, homes will go in.
so why did he tell her that if it's not true?
We don't know.
Because me and him see things very differently.
Okay, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
because-
Possibly from his point of view, it is a factual statement. From my point of view, it's not. Some things are subjective. I don't know if to be true, no.
Okay,
Just to follow up on that, so it doesn't seem like the ordinance, if it's tying development to school capacity, right? You're concerned about adding new families to a particular area. I don't see how that would hamper commercial development because you're not adding new families with
The
commercial.
argument is that for commercial businesses to be attracted to a community, it's based on the number of rooftops. Which there's validity in that argument. You know, if you live in a town of 500 people, you're not getting a Walmart.
Mhm.
But with the rate of growth that we're seeing now, and you see the growth that's happening in Star, it's not so much a matter of when it will happen. Or not if it will happen rather, but when. It's coming west as we speak. It's been coming west for a decade now. Middleton is next. But like I said, some people see things differently than I do.
Well, I'm just speaking with the highway district director, who happens to live, in the county here and has to deal with the traffic of trying to drive through State Street. He says that for county developments, the county is more restrictive in requiring new developments to actually do road improvements, where he's alarmed at the lack of requirements the city has made. And he blames the city for a lot of the problems for approving these developments without the city considering the ramifications on the infrastructure that we have now.
I can partially agree with that. A lot of that is done prior to it coming to council and the negotiations that happen that get fed into the development agreement. So I would say, yes, we could be more strict, but then you have to walk a tightrope of if you're overly restrictive, if you ask too much, that's an undue burden, which is unconstitutional as per the US Supreme Court for 40, 50 years. So you have to walk a tightrope, but I agree that we could do more.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're good.
Second issue, so I lost my train of thought for a second. I have decided to take it upon myself, not as a member of the city council, not on behalf of the city, but just as Dave Murray, to try to get us a new elementary school. The secondary goal to that is to fix the funding mechanism in the state for education, which I don't know how many people are aware, not many people seem to be aware. The Supreme Court of the state ordered the legislature to fix the funding mechanism 2 decades ago, slightly more now, and it has neglected to do so. So I decided to take it upon myself to attempt to get us a new school, and in the process, petition the legislature to do their duty and fix that mechanism. I didn't say I was optimistic I could do it, but I'll do
My
it.
face telling.
I'll try.
I appreciate that though.
I would be more than happy to work with any of you or all of you if you would like to take part in it. Right now, I'm looking for an attorney, preferably one familiar with state code and education law. If not, just somebody who's idealistic and has free time they're willing to give. So anything that you all may have to assist in that, if you're interested, I'd be glad to hear it. I'll give you a business card when I'm done up here.
Perfect.
Is that a question or?
Jake, you got something to say?
Good.
Thank you.
The third thing, I've been meaning to come down and raise the question of a civics and citizenship program for our kids. Now, we have some semblance of that now where we require attendance at city council, things like that. But I'd really like to see the development of a comprehensive program that will educate children on what civics are and what makes a good citizen. We all talk about freedoms, everybody flies a flag off the back of their truck, but nobody talks about the inherent responsibilities of a citizen in a republic. They forget about that part because you gotta get off your couch to do that part. So if this body is interested in that, I would be very happy to be part of a committee to plan that out, hopefully get it enacted next year.
What would that look like?
We could snowball on that one for a long time. If we're talking comprehensive, then you go all the way back to the roots of citizenship in the Western world, which would be the Athenian democracy, and moving all the way through the Roman Republic to our founding fathers, who all drew their inspiration from the classical world, and there's no reason why we shouldn't as well. And the lessons that you can teach from that and the examples that you can give are virtually endless. And it involves just being active in your community, being aware, being informed, being educated, so that when something comes up that you don't like, you don't just come down here or over to City Hall and start yelling at people. You actually understand what the process is, what feeds into that, the laws that affect it. Being active in your community, volunteering, serving others.
Could that look like a mayor's youth
Like
council, like a MIAC? Could that,
a partnership between the city and schools, is that what you're saying? Or?
well, are you aware with MIAC, Mayor's Youth Council, that like Caldwell does?
I am, and I raised the issue, and it has not.
Because that feels like that could be a partnership and would be good, because then you are serving in your community. And they do a lot of good things there.
I would agree. I once proposed to Steve Rule that we give out citizenship awards once a month, one for an adult and one for a kid. We take nominations from the schools. And I said, for the kid, we can bring them down to City Hall, you give them their little certificate, sit them down at the mayor's desk, and they're mayor for a day. You show them around town, it'd be really fun. Steve said, boy, I don't know if I like the idea of a kid being mayor. And that got real awkward real quick. So I think that is also going to be on board for now.
Okay, well, those are all really, really good ideas. Anybody have any questions?
And if I could just
Go ahead.
make a point that this year is the year that our curriculum committees are reviewing our social studies curriculum, which fits right in with the civics discussion.
Could we put him on there?
I've already given his name to Paige
Thank
and they're working on putting that committee together now to start
Perfect.
reviewing for that, for the coming.
Those are all really good ideas and things that need to be taught, so.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Anything
Come
else?
out there and, they're up here.
You may have my number from before when I called you, but I don't know for sure.
Oh, boy, no. It's probably in there if I search real hard.
Mark, you already have mine,
Yeah,
because I
I
go
got
through
it.
every day pretty much.
It's okay. We appreciate what you do. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, David.
Well, let's move on to discussion items. We will go to discussion item A, student data review with Mrs. Goodson. Come on up to the podium.
What do you want first? Let's do ISAC. So the state has released the final results from our spring 23 assessment. And so that's what we have here for you today. So as a reminder, the state summative ISAT is for grades 3 through 8 and 11 now. It used to be grade 10, and that has since changed to grade 11 last year. So you'll see as a district for math, we're sitting just above the state average. So we, as a whole, we're 45% proficient, and the state was 42% proficient. Down below, you can see the grade level breakdown. For the ISAT, so you can follow the cohort of students through. It's color coded. It doesn't show up that well on this screen. But you can see how a cohort of third graders went from third to fourth to fifth grade. Now, one shift that we noticed in this year's test, so when COVID started in 2020, 2021, they gave what they call the shortened ISAT or an adjusted ISAT, which it shortened it. This last year, they went back to the long form ISAT. And so that is reflected in those scores next spring. They're going back to the shortened version of the ISAT. So to some degree, you're shifting with the moving target on some of those components.
Do you have any input as far as what the state does?
We've been asked
of
to give
why they're going back and
input,
forth?
and knowing that a longer test can adjust the yield of results that you get. Because some of those tests can be 1.5, 2 hours. I mean, they're broken up. So, my recommendation would be the shortened one on that regard.
But the consistency
It's the consistency.
is what bothers me.
So you're comparing slightly different pieces together when you're looking at this. On the ELA side, our district is scoring at 57% and the state is at 52%. What's interesting to note for the 11th grade students is that they took it their 10th grade year. And if they scored proficient in 10th grade, they did not retake it their 11th grade year. Only our 11th grade students who were not proficient in the 10th grade year took it. So you're really getting a combination of 10th grade proficiency and 11th grade proficiency from last year in that. Now moving forward, it will be all 11th graders. That's just what they did in the transition period so that our 10th graders didn't have to retake. Who scored proficient as an 11th grader did not have to retake the ISAT. Are there questions about that data?
Just a little bit of concern on the 11th graders as far as the math. And I know that wasn't all the 11th graders.
Yeah.
But it just 43% is a little bit low.
High school is challenging when it comes to the assessment end because
They kind of switch out.
how intentional are they when they take the test? Those types of pieces.
Yeah,
are they
true.
seeing the value in it? I can't say that's all of the reasoning, but younger kids tend to like to please a little bit more or, do their very best in that regard.
Okay.
As an example,
Yeah.
in the previous ISAT, back 2013 and before that, a student would not graduate from high school if they had not passed the ISAT, done an alternate route, which was in most cases as challenging as the ISAT. When you have that situation, the motivation to pass the test at some point was greater for a student because there was that, if you don't pass, you won't graduate. That requirement was lifted when they moved to this new ISAT, and so that changes a little bit of the motivation behind taking the test.
What was the reasoning behind their changing it?
I couldn't tell you. But-
Okay. Thank you.
And so the science ISAT, this is our second year on the new ISAT, and we are sitting just below the state at 41%. Students take this ISAT at the end of a grade band. So 5th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade are the years that they take this ISAT. Okay. So the Idaho Reading Indicator is given in grades K through 3. It's known as the IRI, and the platform that the state utilizes is called iStation. And this is a breakdown of comparison by grade level of where the district sits versus the state. So sitting in kindergarten, we're just slightly above the state, and the other 3 grade levels just slightly below. And again, you can track the cohort. Well, one of the notices that we've got that we can see is between second and third grade from year to year. As you'll notice either a drop or a stagnation in that regard. And so that's something that we look into, saying, okay, what's happening? Because it's not just a cohort piece that we're following through. One thing to note in 2020, in the last administration last year, is that the norms, they re-normed the test. And so the reason the state was late coming out with the data is because there was a calculation error in how those norms were translated into the data. So you're gonna notice that they shifted between last year and this new year. So the last document that I've got to share with you is our SIC comparison, how we kind of stack up against other schools in our surrounding area. And one thing that I thought it was important to highlight to provide context for is our school size. So where we look at West Ada and Boise at, 38,000 students, we have approximately 4,300 students. So that's what we had enrolled last year. So when we look at how we compared math-wise, we are right up there with West Ada and Boise. So to me, that's a celebration point that we're able to stay at that high mark. When you look at the growth, we actually went down, and it's reported across the state for ISAT scores as taking a dip. ELA, same thing. We are just right behind West Ada when it comes to our proficiency level. And quite a few schools saw a decrease as well.
Do you think that's the best indicator of how we should be comparing our student body as far as how we're doing, comparing it to other schools?
It's one way that we can look at it.
What do you think is the best way to look at it?
I think multiple lenses are the best way to look at it. Like this is a regional way of viewing it. You can also start looking at student demographics. So which schools have very similar demographics to what we have. Whether it's
How would you summarize how our student body is doing based on the standardized testing? You think we're doing all right, or?
I think we're at or above the state level on a whole. And that's how I would, in brief summary on that end. Is there area for growth? Absolutely. Because I would anticipate that's, a question is, so we have this, so we saw numbers slide down, not where we want them to be. How are we responding to it?
Okay.
On those ends, what I can say is that a district-wide focus of ours this year is response to intervention. It is a thread woven through all of our professional development this year. This morning, our administrators and our RTI leads, our response to intervention leads, received training. So district-wide, we had training this morning that we'll take into our professional development on Friday and the rest of our PD days, so that we know how are we responding when we see this data, not just as a whole, but like down to the individual student level. What does that look like?
So is that grade starting at kindergarten, going up to
Yeah.
at least 11th
How
grade?
are we all taking a part as an entire district, in moving our struggling learners forward? It takes all of us.
Yes, it does. And I think that the response to, the RTI response to intervention part is going to take a lot from administrators as well as teachers to be on board.
Yep.
To do that, because you're looking at the whole classroom, not just the kids that are moving forward.
Yeah.
You're looking at your whole continuum. So I'm glad to hear you're looking at that way.
Absolutely. Well, and that tier 1 instruction that we can provide to all students, we want that to be as solid as possible so that we know what we need to be intervening with.
Good to hear.
When we look at science, when we look at the proficiency level, same thing sitting at the top, but when you look at the growth from year to year, now keep in mind, these are two different cohorts of students when we look at some of these pieces. Down 3.5% on the science piece of it. And with the IRI, given the norms change, I did not feel comfortable with a comparison in that regard. So we are sitting just below the state at 64.2%. When you look overall. The celebration point on the IRI is our kindergarten, because last year was our first year of full day kinder, and you can really see it in the data from those students. So it'll be very interesting to see how they progress as a cohort through this year's first grade and so on and so forth.
Questions? Your wish?
So thank you.
Thank you, Paige.
You guys.
All right, let's move on to a presentation from our principal at Mill Creek, Mrs. Holman.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessie Holman. I think we met Jay. He was my and I didn't know. We're excited to share what's new and kind of happening at Mill Creek since the start of the school year and a little bit before. So thanks for having me tonight. The first thing I want to do though is introduce my assistant principal, Nicole Holloway. So Nicole she oversees special education at Mill Creek. She does evaluations for 11 staff members. She's also our admin for all 504 meetings, completes walkthroughs, and then we have a lot of recess duties and front drop-off duties. It's great fun. But I am very appreciative to have her with the amount of students that we have. It is great to have an assistant, so she doesn't make. Between 2022 and 2023, we added 4 new portables, 8 classrooms. We did get a portable with bathrooms, which has been great for our SPED department. Cindy and I talked about that at one point in time. My teachers actually love it because when they send their students to the bathroom before, they would get lost, or it would take them 10 to 15 minutes to get back. And now they can really dive in and get all of that through. So while portables aren't perfect, we are happy to have the space. Our new mild to moderate program is housed out there with 6 students. And then our regular resource room is also out there. SLP is currently housed in an office. Sorry, Lisa, I jumped ahead. SLP is currently housed in an office and storage room at Mill Creek, so they're not receiving services in a classroom.
Say that acronym for the audience.
Oh, speech and language. Yes. Sorry.
It's okay.
And then OT, occupational therapy, they're doing services in the hallway or in the hallway between 2 classrooms out in the portables, because we just don't have the room at Mill Creek.
How effective is that?
Yeah.
If you're in the hallway.
In the hallway, it's not as effective. We moved them into that hallway in the portable between the 2 SPED classrooms, and I think that's been a little bit better. Ideally, they'd love to have their own space, but we just don't have that right now. So we do appreciate the support though, and the portables that we received. It has helped a lot. Character trait shirts at Mill Creek. So every month, our PTA purchases character trait shirts, and so the winners receive a shirt and an award. It's really kind of fun, and the kids love to wear them around town. If you ever see them, like this month was Respect for September, and so they just love them. Most of them will put them on right away, and we're like, whoa, go to the bathroom and change, but they want those shirts on, like, so they can show everybody. So it's a really cool deal. We also held our 2nd annual Fall Festival. It was amazing. Our own superintendent, which I had to put a video in here of, he was in the dunk tank. And totally got dunked in his suit and tie, so the kids loved it. But the funds from our Fall Festival. Yeah, you want to play it again? You should just keep it rolling.
No, we don't need a loop.
No.
Put that on the website.
Yes.
I remember. I've been in the web.
It is a really good workout. I put down that. But the funds made, it goes to support our character trait shirts that we do, but also teacher and classroom needs, along with Wagon Toe, and then much more. So it is a great event, and our families love it. Homecoming week at Mill Creek was amazing, as always. We love to partner with the high school and get involved with what they're doing. So there's a picture of our float. We invited the cheerleaders out to, we do Rock Your School every month, and so we play music, and the teachers all come out, and they have pom-poms, and they're cheering, and they greet the students, and our kids love it. And the kids that come off the buses get the same greeting as well. So the cheerleaders were able to join us for Rock Your School in the morning, which they thought was really cool. And then the football players came and joined us after their assembly at the high school and hung out with our kids. Our littles want to tackle the football players, so we have to remind them like, hey, hands off, or just run after that kid because he's really fast. So we did enjoy having a good time though partnering with the high school this year. It was good fun. And then we'll talk about our new curriculum, Bridges, which we are implementing at Mill Creek. Teachers at Mill Creek are implementing the new math curriculum with assistance from the curriculum department and our instructional specialists. They did a unit study. It has been a mindset shift for teachers. So our old curriculum was you basically just taught the lesson and moved on. And this one spirals back around. So they may not be taught to mastery that first time around, but the second time or third time it comes around, it'll be taught to mastery. So it's kind of definitely a mindset shift from what we've had the last 6 years. This last week, teachers and administrators went through, so Holloway and myself, and then we met with every grade level team. We worked through all the standards that are being taught in Bridges, along with Number Corner and Concept Quest, which are also components of Bridges, and then our intervention piece that came with it. So we got a lot of items to discuss the standards and just kind of make sure everybody understands where we're headed, when the standards are supposed to be mastered, and then if they're not mastered, where are they mastered in Number Corner or another piece of our curriculum. So it was a lot to throw at the teachers last week. But I will say though, I'm very proud of the time and effort that our staff at Mill Creek has put into this. They put a lot of time outside of their working day to implement this curriculum. So kudos to them. We also reached out to Paramount Elementary in West Ada because we have noticed they're probably the closest demographically in size to Mill Creek. They continue to be at the top of the state in ISAT and IRI. So we're looking at taking our PLC team, which is a new team at Mill Creek. It's kind of a member from every single grade level. We look at data, we talk what's happening in their meetings. Basically, they're the academic portion of a leadership team. So we're attacking all of it. So our goal is to go visit and determine what they're doing that's keeping them at top. Because we're still sitting above state average at Mill Creek, but we're stagnant. We're not seeing those gains being made. So we want to know what they're doing there that makes them stay at the top. Yep. So we're going to go figure it out. We're going to go steal what they're doing. It's my hope.
No, we're collaborating.
Yes, we are. And then the last thing I have is just, it's our second week of Starbase. The students love it. Our 5th grade students get to go out to Gowan Field. They spend the whole day out there doing STEM activities. It's been amazing. So second weekend, they've already done some chemistry stuff. They've worked with electricity. You can see them doing their it's a great event. So my daughter's a 5th grader. I get to hear about it, and it's phenomenal. They love.
So the grade as a whole, or is it select kids? How does that work?
So it's the whole 5th grade, but because we're so big, we send 3 on Monday, 3 on Wednesday.
Perfect.
Yeah, so it's a great situation for us, and they love going. Lastly, I just want to say thank you because we do feel the support from the board and what you put in place for Mill Creek as we've grown. And I also want to thank my staff, classified and certified, because without them, we wouldn't be doing as well as we are. So.
Can I ask you how many kids do you have currently?
We're currently sitting at like 735.
Okay.
Was last
How does the lunchroom work?
All right, so lunchroom.
Just want to know.
No, this is a good question. Lunch starts at 11, and then every 10 minutes a new grade level comes in. So like at 11:10, first grade, kindergarten goes at 11, 11:10, first grade comes in.
So they're inhaling their food.
No, they can stay in there.
I mean, I get it, but.
No, and then when second grade comes in at 11:20, we dismiss
Okay.
our first graders. So they have about 20 minutes in the cafeteria.
Perfect.
It's it has to run like
Oh, I
a
can
well-oiled
imagine.
machine. And then usually, we don't kick our 5th graders out, but usually they're out of the lunchroom by 12:10, maybe
Wow.
12:15. So it's pretty quick. It's wild. If you ever are bored and you want to come hang out and see Control Chaos, you should come check it out. It's good fun.
I just want to say thank you very much. I wish all the principals would come in and do a presentation.
They will be.
They are.
They will be.
She volunteered to be first.
Oh,
She's very
that's
nice.
awesome.
First, thank
I'll
you.
go first. I'll lay it out
Wow,
there.
that's great. I have one question about the portables. I know that's great that one has a bathroom, but
Yes.
would it help with that many portables to have like even just a standalone bathroom facility out there with all those? No, somebody said yes back there.
Well, because she lives in the portables.
Yeah.
She teaches in the portables, so yes, it would be. I mean, only it's closer, like, so proximity wise, sending a kid all the way into the building
Yeah.
as opposed to sending them right there. And then it would be beneficial, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
question.
good to know.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've been meaning to call you and ask you, do you send out a newsletter?
Yeah.
Monthly?
I send out almost weekly.
Okay, so can you put our names
Yeah.
on, or
I
at
would
least
love
mine?
I can totally do
And
that.
then I have one more question. What does traffic look like in the morning and after school? Because you have so many students. I would like to know that.
Okay, on mornings when it's raining or no?
Oh, yes, today's bad weather.
It is a hot mess out in front of the building. There's not really another way to describe it. So we have basically three lanes because you have the turn lane coming down Middleton Road.
Mhm.
So we have people trying to turn into Mel Creek, and then we have cars going like that. So our crosswalk guard, she almost gets hit quite frequently. We are working with the city though, to take care of that.
Good.
We usually are backed up to the roundabout around 7:50 to 8:00 every morning. It's actually been pretty good this year, but it hasn't really gotten cold and we've only had one rainy morning. So when it gets cold, it's gonna get worse. It always does, and we'll back up both ways.
And after school, it's kind of the same.
After school, it's kind of the same. We're really trying to fine tune our pickup times and how we're releasing students. I actually think we can get that many kids released and into cars. What is it taking us, like 12 minutes?
Nice.
12 minutes. So we have them in right about there.
Perfect.
So it's actually moving pretty well for what we have going on.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's awesome. Appreciate it.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Jesse, appreciate it.
I haven't done notes, I know.
Yes, avoid all the schools at school get out time. All right, let's move on to discussion item C. We will turn that over to Dr. D.
Okay, this is just the second part. If you remember earlier, about 6-7 months ago, we had the Juul settlement from the vaping lawsuit that we participated in. Altria had not yet settled their portion of it. So Altria has now settled. And so what you see in the attached documentation is what because remember, this was it was millions and millions of dollars for Altria, but this was across a lot of states. I don't know exactly how many schools participated, but a lot. Anyway, so our portion of that settlement would be $20,256 that we would receive that could then be used for the vape detectors and the bathrooms. It could be used for educational purposes for our students. Anything that goes along those lines, we can utilize those dollars for.
Is that prior to the attorney's fees case?
Yeah, that's the actual amount that will come to us.
Because the way it says from that amount, attorney's fees, case costs, and court ordered whatever, way down, will be deducted.
Oh, see, they had given me a different perspective on that.
Unless I'm just reading it wrong.
No, you're probably reading.
You're reading it.
It's the first paragraph. And I'm just curious if we get a kind of a.
We will get a breakdown of it all, because they're taking those key fees from both settlements.
Oh, okay.
So they'll put the total amount from both together, and then those amounts will be deducted. So once we have that, that's something I can share with you as a board.
Will we need to vote on how that's spent?
No, there's no legal
Like
limitations,
detectors?
but
Again?
but that's something that absolutely as a board, you can direct me as the superintendent to
So it's
utilize
not,
those funds in a given way.
no strings attached.
There's no specific strings, just that in most cases, you would use that kind of settlement to help ameliorate the impacts of the vaping.
Right, okay.
Perfect.
So There'll need to be an action later with the other action items to approve that settlement so that I can sign for the district.
Perfect.
I'm just curious, did you have any questions? Are you
I-
going to contact?
I've reached out just to see if there were other common questions that other districts were asking, but there were none. So and none that I had specifically. It was a pretty straightforward process.
Okay.
Well, I would like to see vape detectors if we can.
Okay.
I think that
Perfect.
is something we need.
And I think now that this one's settling, we'll see those funds start to come in.
Perfect, thank you. All right, let's move on to discussion item B, and that will be Dr. Gee as well.
All right, so this kind of goes along with a little bit of what Councilman Murray discussed, but we have over the last several years been working with, when a new development comes to the city or county, and now also the city of Star, they'll send us notification of that, and then what we try to do is we give a note of what that impact will be. So if you are the number of students per new house, per new development site is about 0.569. So if you had a development with 100 houses coming in, you would anticipate that would be 56.9 students coming in as a result of that development. And so depending on the size of the development, we give that information to the county or the city and say, here's the things how this is going to impact us. And we've been sharing that over the last several years. There have been at the planning and zoning level of both the city and county some efforts to push developers to work with the district to improve, to, I guess, help offset some of the costs. They're not necessarily asking them to build a school, but there's impacts that they could help with. And so lately, we've actually had a few more developers start moving that direction. And this is the first one that's actually gone to a point of a memorandum of understanding where they have agreed that they would pay $1,500 per lot that is platted. And so they'll plat those in different phases as the phase comes on. According to this MOU, the district would receive $1,500 for each one of those lots that are coming in that phase that we could then use towards infrastructure of, I would recommend we place that in our plant facilities funds to help with the infrastructure that we need around some of these buildings. So this MOU, there's no requirements on the part of the district. It's a voluntary donation. The reason for the MOU is for them to be able to show either the county or the city what they're doing, so that they can say, no, we have entered into this agreement with the district. There's really not an obligation on the part of the district in this case. And so if you'll keep scrolling there, let's see, it didn't say the number of lots on this one.
Had the acres.
187?
It's like 187 lots.
It is. I'm looking
Okay,
at that.
perfect, thank you.
You bet.
So 187 lots at 1,500. Tell you really quick.
I was gonna, but I didn't think Jake would appreciate me typing.
So 280,000 is what we would be able to expect if this development were passed by the agency, Canyon County. If it were passed by Canyon County, we'd receive that once all those lots have been platted. So my recommendation would be that we accept this memorandum of understanding. I've indicated to the developers in this situation that just you know, it doesn't change how we approach those letters, except that we'll include that this is what they've agreed with us. We're not telling those planning and zonings or county commissions what they should do. This is what they've done so that they can then decide if they feel
So
like that's.
this is like that, here, this is what we're doing to help.
Yeah,
Maybe we
this
should-
is, yeah, but that's all between them and the county or city.
Right,
Because if we start down that road, then it becomes, I'll only say yes to this if you give us something, and then it becomes kind of an extortion thing because there's not a law that allows for school districts to do that.
do you know the cross streets of this Farmington Hills?
I could give you
I didn't see
a
that.
map here, 1 second. I'll give you an idea.
I'm just curious at what, I know they're outside the city and they need to annex it in. Or they will
Whether it's
annex it
county,
in.
yeah.
Is
There's a description at the end.
I know, but it doesn't really,
It's lawyer
I'm
description.
not,
So this is
By degrees.
187 lots, but
Mhm.
260 acres. Yeah. 187. You figure about a half student per household average.
Yep.
About a half, so.
Okay, we are between Lansing and Duff
oh, okay,
and above Foothill Road, north of Foothill.
north of.
Yep.
Thank you.
There's already like a ton of places
Wow.
back there.
It's about 93 students.
Hence it's coming our way.
The school district. And I mean, that's a nice token amount, but it's still only 1%
Right.
cost of the elementary school.
Right.
Yeah.
But at least they're willing to come forward and do
Some-
something,
yeah,
right?
And,
I
and just,
appreciate that. So not all developers are bad.
yeah. Well, and they voluntarily came to us. This wasn't,
No.
we're saying they have to.
I appreciate that.
The other thing, is we, just along these same lines, we've had other developers come, and your idea of the standalone restroom, have talked about providing that as their contribution to, you know, helping with the infrastructure. We talked with Jesse and, some of those over at Mill Creek to see what that would be. So they started the conversation. We haven't, I mean, that's only been a few weeks. So there's a chance for some of these others that might come along as well. And I think it'll kind of depend on how the county responds to this as being the first MOU from the district, saying this is what's happening. And so once others see if it passes through, then that'll change things I think, for the district.
Especially with thousands of more coming.
Right.
Yeah.
Any questions on that?
No, thank
No.
you. Thank you for doing that,
Absolutely.
following through. I appreciate it.
So,
All right, we can move on to field trips.
Okay, we have two field trips, high school, one of these is FFA Nationals, in Indianapolis, Indiana in the spring. And then the other is a baseball tournament for our varsity baseball team in Scottsdale, Arizona. Both of those obviously being out of state, longer trips. Students and the organizations will be, funding all of those. Those packets we're actually very full of details on the trips. If there are any questions, my recommendation would be that we approve these trips. But if you have any questions, you can dive in.
Nope, they sound like good opportunities.
Good.
All right. No questions? We're good? Let's move on to discussion item F. The ratification.
I've asked Lisa to walk us through
All
this.
right.
So there were two items that we were still working with the MEA to negotiate through. And so if you go down, sorry,
It's the
to
coach's contract too.
this page right here, we're looking at page 8. There's just a sentence in there that was an asterisk that we just wanted to make sure both parties understood credits and agreed to apply for consideration chronologically. Just as we look at transcription dates, there were some questions about that, so we made sure we clarified that. And then, as you scroll down, you'll see there's a new coach's salary scale that's been placed in here.
It's highlighted.
I didn't see it.
Did it not show?
It wasn't highlighted,
Yeah, let me
So
pull it up this way.
I thought there was just one thing.
No, I'll just pull it up in front of me for you.
It's just have to say draft all over until we approve it.
Yeah,
Yeah, and it does, like on the screen here, it says
Says
draft all over.
Yeah, it does. It's,
I don't know if it's that light, that screen is.
Too light of
Watering it, washing it all out.
Zoom.
Okay. So here's the actual salaries. So this would be the new compensation schedule.
That's not a page of this, is it?
It is, it should be a
What
page in
page?
that.
Yeah,
Page 12,
Page 12.
right after page 11.
Are you sure it's before page 13?
I meant to tell you what was on page 11. When it came out.
It's not there.
It's not
It's not there?
It's not there, not on the one that's attached.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right, that's awesome.
I'm trying to be helpful.
I'm not, honestly, not helpful at all.
Okay, so,
So I'll just send this to all of you.
but we can probably go through
Oh,
the
you're all right, go through it.
salient points on this.
Yeah, the key differences, do you want to talk about?
You can go ahead,
Okay.
if you'll include what we did last year
Yeah.
as well.
So last year, we looked at increasing the space salary.
Hadn't been in,
Increase We made last year, go ahead.
and it hadn't been increased in like 7 years, the base.
So that was the big jump last year, in these numbers. There was a pretty decent change there, which then, since they're all paid on the percentage, then increased the amount they were
That's the
paid
base.
that way last year.
That's just the base.
So then this year,
And then
we
it's a
came back
percent off.
and looked at these percentages. Mr. Gee sat down with the committee and walked through what recommendations would come from increasing these percentages. The committee really felt like especially these high school head, high school assistants was a place to focus this year. And so most of these went up a couple percentage
2 to
points.
4%.
Yep, 2 to 4. And so like the year before baseball would have looked at 7%, so that would have gone up to 9% and so on and so forth. We also added a few positions. So swimming was a newer one this year. You'll see robotics, esports, some of those positions then were asked to be brought into the negotiated agreement as well. And so those ones when we added, you can see it also then added a stipend for middle school as well.
Will you clarify why orchestra and band don't have a percent?
Yeah, so orchestra was a conversation, and part of that was when it was first put into the negotiated agreement, there was an after-school program and quite a few duties that were outside of the regular contracting. Those programs don't exist necessarily anymore with orchestra, and so we have a new teacher, and part of the conversation we've had this year is if there's things you want to do and that does increase that, then we'll continue to have this conversation and really show what that outside of the normal contract looks like. And so there was quite a bit of conversation around that specifically this year with orchestra.
Perfect.
And then band, did you say band too?
Band, yes.
Yeah, and so band does have,
Well, band does, I
Yeah.
didn't see that. I was thinking, oh, it's academic. Both.
and so band has that, but then you'll see down here, there's also the extended days
Mm-hmm.
for those positions as well.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And so that's where we left orchestra in there, is so then that conversation continues to be
Yeah, I
had
was looking for it.
as we work through that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Is there a chart that compares our compensation to other districts in the valley?
We worked hard to get it there.
It's several charts.
Yeah.
So we can share some of that information with you.
We had
Be interesting, just-
some negotiation.
We definitely moved in the right direction.
Yes,
It's just
we
not
were a
something-
little bit low,
We're waiting.
maybe a lot low.
Okay, yeah,
So,
that's good to know.
and really, and I'll speak to that even as a head coach, that is sometimes a year. That is 12 months out of the year. So, or sometimes 9, but usually 12 in today's world.
And I think we would all agree that there's still work to be done here.
Yeah.
That these are steps in the right direction, but there's still work that needs to be done.
Perfect.
And then do you want to bring up the one wording?
Yeah, we talked,
Okay.
yeah.
Perfect.
We did.
So can I ask a question about the mentor teacher
Negotiating
situation?
agreement.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Are we doing that?
Yes.
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 I know it's by Idaho code, but are we doing it for the first year and the second year?
We are. And
Are
we
they-
even, for third years, we have a building mentor, their third year, and so we're going a little bit beyond that as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
In all K through 12.
Yes. Yep.
So who manages the mentor
So,
program?
Paige works with our, MEA representation, and so there's different leads. There's one, that works with the middle school, one that works with the high school, so there's different leads that she sits down and works with, and then they manage the program.
Okay, because just, going through from starting in August, I guess you could even go back to July, but people being hired.
Yes.
There's a lot of new plus
Yep.
new FTE, but also attrition and everything.
And it's a continual conversation with myself, with Paige, with the mentor program, to really try to look at it and not, make sure nobody falls through the cracks.
So is there some sort of like a mentor handbook that the mentor has and works with the mentee?
Yeah.
And they go through, they have a certain schedule when they meet
Yes.
and when they get observed or whatever, however that works. Okay, can that be something?
Absolutely, yeah. You can
Okay,
share that
I'd like to
information with
look
you,
at
yeah. And each year prior to the school year starting and really in the spring, we'll sit down and talk through what their thoughts are, what adjustments need to be made from the year before, what are different things they might want to bring on this year. We set a budget with them, so they have a budget to work in. So there's different things they can do. So last year, for example, they did a observation day where they would switch schools, they provided lunch, they brought everybody together. And so, yeah, and there's monthly meetings, and so there's
Okay.
several contact
That's what I
points.
was hoping to kind of see throughout the handbook. Are the mentees given a chance to voice their concerns or what's going really well and what's not to someone other than the mentor?
Yes.
Would it be like you or Paige?
Yes,
or- okay.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And we try to make sure that they know those doors are also open whenever. We
Okay.
also work with the instructional specialists, so then they have support that way as well.
Okay.
And so there's different layered approaches to how we support them.
Great. Thank you.
Good?
Mhm.
All right. Well, let's move on to G, surplus.
And that'll be Alicia.
All righty.
Do you want that projected relation?
Okay, so I'm here to request on behalf of Andy Gray Kinley, our middle school food and finance teacher, to sell some surplus items that her program is no longer using. The list is in front of you. Per Idaho code, we do have to get your blessing in order to dispose of these. And they are less, as you can see, it's gonna be less than $500. Her request is that she sells them for the costs provided and that she takes those proceeds and puts them back into her program.
I would hope that would be something that she could do. She would, yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so let's go on to H.
Okay, so this
Okay.
one is the Idaho Career Ready program. And this is one that is at your station here, the documents that we'll go through. And Lisa, if you wouldn't mind, just let's bring this map up first. And I'll just describe what we're talking about. So the Idaho Career Ready Students Program is a program that was authorized by the state legislature this last spring to provide facility and equipment needs for schools in the career technical education realm. And so they have created a grant opportunity. So, and they created in 3 phases. The first phase was early on in July, and that schools that already had things in place went ahead and made application, and they've approved some grants as high as $4.5 million. There's a certain amount of money that they have, and then once the money's gone with what they've approved, they'll stop. So what we're looking at and what I'm asking for your approval to move forward with is to create a construction and automotive tech building that we would place by our alternative school. So this picture you've got on the screen right here is Annex A of the middle school and our alternative school. And that space is the rough outline of the square footage. It wouldn't necessarily fit as a square right there. I mean, we'll be looking at the space a little bit closer, but that is essentially what we'd be looking at. That would be 2 shops. And if you'll go to that one, that would be 2 shops and 3 classrooms. It would fit within that space. And right now we've started our construction program. They're operating out of that extra room, is essentially in the back of the rec center. Really not a proper shop setting, but they've already been doing some wonderful things. They've built. They're in the process of 2 bully barn sheds that they're building for the rec department, and then they'll build some others that they'll actually sell. We'll place them out here on the main street, and they'll sell for. And then we would like to look at an auto tech program as well. We kind of have to bring these programs on one at a time. But in order to do an auto tech program, we got to have a space to be able to do that. So you can see how this is, and these diagrams are all options. We just needed to put something together to get the idea across to the grant authorizers. Excuse me. So if you can go to that next slide, roll up. So another way to look at the layout would be, I think it just scrolls up from that side. Yeah.
Yeah, there.
So there's another way that we could place those. Those patio covers are actually outside, a covered patio outside to store supplies and materials. But the goal would be to have classroom space and shop space. And this would not just be for our alternative school students. High school students could come down to those shops and participate. Middle school students could look at opportunities to explore different careers and come out and be a part of that as well. So we felt like that placement was helpful. As you roll through, and I don't think we need to go through these elevations, but in your packet, you got some elevations that just show a rough outline of what it could be. Wright Brothers helped us put these diagrams together. If we were to be awarded the grant, we'd have to go through a bid process, obviously, but Wright Brothers just wanted to help us out and put some of that together. They gave a budget estimate, and the budget estimate that they have looked at is about $2.2 million, which is for everything. That's the site work, the concrete, the electrical, the HVAC, all of it to get us up and rolling. And so my intention would be, with your approval, to submit that grant for the second phase, which is going to be due on November 1st. We'll submit these materials. We've got a number of partners that have already said that they would partner with us. Home Depot, JPW Industries, the Snake River Building Contractors Association, Wright Brothers, they've all said yes, they would help with that. We're reaching out to our state and local representatives and leaders, the Greater Middleton Parks and Rec, CWI, to get further support for that. And once we've got all that put together, we submit to move forward on that. So any questions about the project, the scope of it, what we're looking to do?
That's great.
I think
No, it's
it's
needed.
Okay,
I think it's great.
fantastic.
so we will get ours in for this second round so that we're considered, because I'm afraid if we wait for the third round, there's not gonna be money left. So,
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, are you ready for the next one?
yep.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, so finally, last month, we talked about the RFP for the elementary school security program. And there were some additional questions for applied concept security that we wanted to roll through. And so we did have, well, I met with their leadership and they came and met with our EOP team, primarily our director, Mark Hopkins, who leads that, our chief of police, and our director of emergency for personnel for Star and Middleton and Victor. And as we went through that, there were a couple of additional questions that came up, but in terms of the understanding between our local law enforcement, emergency officers, and our security officers, the agreement is that once those local officers our police officers are on scene, our security officers are stepping back. They're not going to try and be involved. They're not. They cede all of that, responsibility to law enforcement once law enforcement is on the scene. We agreed that they would have a uniform. The uniform would be a sport jacket similar to this, with no tie, collared shirt, but the firearm would be concealed within the sport jacket. And that would be their daily uniform that they'd be wearing. They're working on a method to, if there were an emergency, to identify themselves, something they can throw on, that they have, something that they can pull off, just to show responding law enforcement that this is our school security officer that's taking the actions that they're taking if there were an emergency. We went through there again. There are some additional details, but a lot of those are just going to be things that it's just, okay, what happens here, what happens here, what happens here, that we have to get them into the position before we start analyzing those details. We talked about a process to coordinate with leadership of applied concept security in the selection of the security officers. And they've agreed that they would sit down with our building principals before a security officer was assigned to a building, just to make sure the fit was appropriate. So each of our elementary school administrators will have an opportunity to work with them prior to them entering into the school. Gave an example of monthly training. There would be monthly firearms training, as well as monthly medical training, triage, use of AEDs, the wound cares, establishing airways, treating for shock, direct pressure techniques. All of those would be things that they would be receiving training on. They'd be talking through de-escalation, de-escalation techniques, to try and essentially talk somebody down before they do something that they would regret. Interagency coordination would be part of that training. So working together with law enforcement and emergency personnel to know what their responses are so that they can better help with that circumstance. And then communications with our emergency operations team. So that would be what the training would be like. We had a discussion of the holster retention level, and the holster retention level, this board, the review board recommended a less stringent holster retention level, and Applied Concepts agreed that would be. And that was, going from, it makes it, easier for them to remove the a firearm in a dangerous situation. With it being concealed, having that type of retention just wasn't necessary since it was concealed, but we talked about it when it was an open carry as well. And then finally, the contract draft with completed amount, start, end times, and renewal. The rate, excuse me, the rate would not change, but because we're getting started later in the year, just have the calculations, we would end up with a total cost for the first year of $111,150. That's for the 3 security officers with a November 1st start date through the rest of the school year. On any day that students are in session, they would be there as well for those days. And so that ends up being about $35,000 per resource officer. Security officer. And those were the questions that the board had asked me to look at. There are any other questions? If not, this meeting would be one to approve moving forward with applied concepts for school security for the remainder of this year. Oh, the renewal would only happen after review by the board of the first year. So it would not be an automatic renewal.
Would we be able to get like updates?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I'll give updates throughout the year because this is a new program. It'll be something that's important for us to understand. Any other questions?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I think with that, we'll have a recess for about 3 minutes. You students need to come up and get your All right. Jake, are you still there? Are you asleep on your hotel bed?
I'm just pining for some Thai food. We'll get there eventually.
Well, DoorDash, you could DoorDash it.
How's the Monday night football game going?
2-3.
Okay.
I was wondering, Raiders.
Nice. We missed out.
All right. We're ready? We're good to go? Okay. Thank you for everyone who wanted to stick around for policy. It's your lucky day.
Yeah.
All right. Is that gonna be Mrs. Pennington?
Yes, Mrs. Pennington will lead us through.
Okay, so we'll start with 2140. What you'll notice on these, the changes that were made most is you'll see some new spots crossed out. And so in the green highlighted area on those Those are places on those ISBA policies where the district needed to make a choice or begin editing how they would want that to read. And so on most of those green highlighted areas, you'll see, if we're looking at 2140, it says optional such surveys. You'll see that we've crossed that out because the last time we talked about how that would go through the superintendent on those surveys to be approved by the principal. And so that's the example on 2140 there. That would be the only change since our last conversation on that policy. When we look at 2425, this one had no changes since our last conversation, so it would still stand as ISBA has recommended it. 2425P, which would be the procedure that attaches to that, that's where you'll see a lot of the green highlighted area where we need to make choices. So you'll notice that we've crossed out or others, and we're really sticking to that counselor and or building principal in this policy in those places where it asks us to make a decision as far as how we want to move forward. Questions so far?
No, I like that.
Foreign exchange students, right now we have it sitting at 10. I know at the last meeting we talked about a percentage. We're still trying to figure out what that percentage could look like without it being a fraction of a percentage that makes sense. And so we're still having that conversations. And so we'll continue to work through that before we get to the third reading as far as what percentage might be appropriate.
10 would be pretty close to 1%.
Yeah, and yeah,
It'd be nice if it was just 1%.
I'm just stuck with that.
Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, anyway.
Yeah. I appreciate the input. Moving to 3270, 3270P, and 3275, and I'm lumping these together because we took the same approach. So in looking at our old policy, there seemed to be quite a few things that maybe lived and died with old administration or different pieces. And so we then pulled the new ISBA policies, which were updated last winter, so the most current version. And in working with Nick Davis and looking through and comparing those and then looking at the input that we've received from parents about our old policies and some things they thought would be nice to have in new policies or different languages we could use as far as what that looks like, we've decided to now put the newest ISBA version in front of you. And so that one in front of you now is a complete revision from the old policy. So what's in front of you is the newest ISBA recommendation.
Well, and they're in Word.
No,
Yes, I
yeah.
think they got attached in Word.
Word,
Yeah.
Word 2.
I know.
2010?
There's quite a few Word
That's
documents.
a little old.
Yeah. So those, like I said, those were most recently updated last year with ISBA, and it brings in the TikTok ban pieces and some of the TikTok trends they were seeing and just more updated components.
Oh, yes.
And so I'm going to continue to work with those individuals to bring kind of our refreshed version of that newest ISBA.
I like that. Thank
So,
you.
okay. And if you want us to work a different direction, you just let us know. It just seemed more appropriate to start heading that direction.
Please, yes.
Yeah.
Going to 3510, which would be student medicines. There were a couple of places we needed to make some decisions in that one as well. And it's really towards the end of it. Since we are bringing on the opioid overdose policy, we needed to make a choice at the end of there. There was an option 1 or option 2 as far as how we're going to handle the opioid if there were to be an overdose. And so that's where then we'll reference the new policy that we're looking at as well, which is 3518. And so that's at the end of 3510. And then that would lead us to 3518. And you'll see that we scratched out, work with the school nurses. Some of those pieces we really wanted to make sure, especially as we're bringing on the option with Narcan, to leave those decisions in the superintendent's court as we continue to move forward
Yeah,
with that as well.
be serious.
And then policy 5230, you'll notice that we did add that sentence in there. And part of that policy, that's when we have employees that are requesting accommodations due to different disabilities or different things like that. We want to make sure we added that sentence, the employee may be asked to work through an interactive accommodation process. So then we make sure that we're documenting those different accommodations we're offering employees or working through the process with them. And then the last one was the restraint and seclusion. There has not been changes to this. In working with Whitney's special ed department, really talked about training, making sure that we can fulfill the requirements of this new state policy, making sure we didn't want to change any of that, and she feels very comfortable that we can move forward. And so we're leaving it as is for this second reading, and then continuing conversations moving into the third reading.
So the sample is leave as is and, okay.
So there's our updates, and then the recommendation would be to move, especially since we're doing such a large amount of them, to just move them all to the third reading and give us some more time to make sure you guys are comfortable with the changes we're making. And then since we are making some pretty large changes in some of those policies, it gives enough time for us to continue to work with groups, make sure that MEA has time to review them as well.
Perfect.
Sounds good. Thanks, Lisa.
So who's gonna be brave enough to make that motion, but you have to say each one.
At least the number.
Not my turn.
And I can't make the motion, so I'm out. Go ahead.
I make a motion that we take policy 2140, 2425. Do you want me to read what they are?
Just the numbers.
Okay. 2425P, 3090, 3270, 3270, 3275, 3510, 3518, 5230, and 3345, all held over for a third reading.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Let's move on to action items. I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the settlement agreement with Jewel or Altria. Jewel / Altria.
I move that we approve the settlement agreement with Jewel Altria.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the donation MOU review with Middleton 187.
I move that we approve the MOU review for Middleton 187.
Second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. I would entertain a motion to approve or deny adjustment to the negotiated agreement for 2023 and 2024.
I make a motion that we approve the adjustment made in the 23-24 negotiated agreement.
Second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Can we do the field trips together?
Yeah.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve the student trips or deny them.
Go ahead. I move to approve the student trips for the FFA and baseball team.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the surplus declaration.
I make a motion to approve the surplus declaration.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the Idaho Career Ready Students Grant.
I make a motion that we approve the Idaho Career Ready Students Grant.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. I would entertain a motion to approve or deny the school security plan.
I move that we approve the school security plan.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. I would entertain a motion that we go into executive session.
As per section 74-2061B of Idaho Code, to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agents, I move that we go into executive session.
All right, we'll go by roll call.
Trustee Clark,
Yes.
trustee Powell,
Yes.
trustee Wagner,
Yes,
trustee Moore,
Yes.
trustee Dempsey.
Yes.
thank you. With that being said, you can wait outside if you want. We
We'll
appreciate you coming.
wave out the door.
Thank you so much for coming.
Coming back in.
Thank you.